something is missing to us, which is like all these people, and we're just like trying to create our sense of national identity around these missing people. So we are not building our identity on the top of something that exists. We are just like building it on the top of something that we don't have anymore. And the same for this area, Abkhazia. People, if you ask anyone here about Abkhazia, they will all tell you in Georgia is Abkhazia.
Right.
And so this is, but it's not in their life anymore, but they still define themselves.
Welcome back to the Post Definitions podcast. I'm your host, Freddie Lancha, and today we have another special guest.
So my name is Nicolas Kerszenbaum, and I'm a French director. So I'm a playwright, and I'm directing theater. And I'm here in Georgia just like to make some research about Abkhazia, which will be like the subject, the topic of my future play. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to some places, taking lots of notes about it, then just like letting it rest for 6 months, and then writing plays, meaning just like different characters interacting with each other.
Yeah, very cool. Just a little bit of background for our viewers who might be anywhere with little or a lot of knowledge. We are in Tbilisi, Georgia, the country, not the state. And Abkhazia is an area of Georgia that has been occupied by Russia since 2008.
Actually, it's like still more complex than that.
Okay.
Abkhazia and Georgia, they have like this. They're sharing this mutual, stories. They've been sharing it for a millennium, and then when the Soviet Union collapsed, like Abkhazia, because Georgia asked for independence from Russia or from the Soviet Union, Abkhazia asked exactly the same, like independence, but from Georgia. And then in 91-92, there was this big, what they call like independence war for Abkhazia. And so because Abkhazia was supported by the Russian, Abkhazia won this war, but they're very few. I mean, like Abkhazian people, there may be 100,000 people. So they forced 250,000 Georgian people to leave Abkhazia to go to the rest of Georgia, which means that today, as you say, from 2008, Abkhazia is officially occupied by Russia. Abkhazia is unofficially independent, and an independent state, meaning independence of Abkhazia is only recognized by Russia. I think it's Costa Rica or Nicaragua, Venezuela, Syria, and 3 states of Micronesia. I know this is, and so, but like the rest of the world doesn't recognize the independence of Abkhazia, and so this is super interesting to me. Meaning like, because Georgian people, they still believe that Abkhazia is a region, an area of Georgia that belongs to Georgia. And Abkhazian people, they really think they're independent. So what is it really? I mean, like, and they have like, and it's not only just like a political matter, because people here, it's a part of their identity. We are Georgian, and so Abkhazia is Georgian, and Abkhazia is Georgia, definitely. So, and of course, Abkhazian people, they don't follow this narrative at all. So this is something I would love to, to investigate about. And so it has a lot to do with identity things.
Yeah. So far, you understand that Abkhazian people, they identify as Abkhazian.
Yeah, totally.
And neither Russian nor Georgian.
No.
And would Russian government would say that it's what? Also Russia?
Abkhazian, for Russia, just like Abkhazia is Abkhazia, but like super complex today. I'm not a specialist, but what I understood is just like Russia won't say they're occupying Abkhazia. They're just saying that they're protecting Abkhazia against like a Georgian interference. This is it. So, but Abkhazia for Abkhazia, they're really independent. The big thing is now that I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks before, just Russia ask Abkhazia to just like to delete one of their law. They have this rule saying that you cannot build, like Russian people that cannot build buildings in Abkhazia, because Abkhazian people are super afraid that thousands, hundreds of thousands of Russians would come to Abkhazia because it's super beautiful, and so they would be outnumbered by Russian. And the day there are much more Russians than Abkhazian people in Abkhazia, to be super easy for Russia to say, we think it's now Russia. It's not Abkhazia anymore because there's so many Russian people now there.
Yeah.
So they refuse just like to let Russian people build buildings and just like, structures, Russian structures. And so Russia kind of get super angry for that. And so I think it was 2 weeks ago, they said, okay, we're now supporting you. We're just like sending you a lot of money, just like for your infrastructure and so on. If you don't let us build our house, we will stop these money transfers to you. So choose.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tricky, super tricky.
Sounds really complicated.
Yeah, it's super complicated. Like this is just like politics, meaning politics being when you're a super small country like Abkhazia or a super small area, because like for Georgia, Abkhazia is not a country. Abkhazia is still Georgia. So you have to be very careful about the word you're using. But when you're talking about Abkhazia, the big issue is which master do you want to serve, because you're super small and you need some support. So it's just like you have to make compromise all the time. So this is what I'm just like basically working on, which is, and so now that I'm trying just like to get a view about the topics, the big thing is like in 6 months will be, how do you write a play about it? How do you write a play with characters, with just like poetry in it, which won't be which won't be just like a documentary thing. I don't do documentary theater. I'm really writing plays with just like drama.
Yeah, great.
And, so this is what I'm doing.
What drew you to this project specifically?
What, sorry? So
what drew you to this project?
Actually, 2 years ago, I was coming here to Tbilisi because I traveled through Europe by train and bus. My big thing is traveling. I really love it. So I was... it was just after COVID crisis. During 1 month and a half, I decided just like I would take some trains and buses from Paris to Tbilisi and just like try across Eastern Europe, but just like seeing what's happening there.
That's Georgia speaking.
Yeah, waiting for just like the cars to calm down. Is that okay? Are they? Yeah, they are. So I was like crossing all Europe, just like finally to go to Georgia. I didn't know exactly why I want to go to Georgia. Maybe because Georgia is like for theater people, Georgia is kind of interesting because it's like this is a country of Medea, and just like the Golden Fleet. This is how you call it in English. Like Jezo and the Argonauts.
I don't know.
You don't know that? This is a super in the Greek stories, you have two super important travels. You have like Ulysses, and then you have Jezo and the Argonauts. And Jezo and the Argonauts. So the Argonauts, this is this bunch of heroes, and they all take. Okay, this is like the dogs after the cars.
I can actually close the window. It should help.
No, it's over.
Maybe it'll travel through the window anyway. So
okay, and so you have the Golden Fleet, and so all these heroes are going to what's it called, Colchid. I don't know if this is like the name in English, like Colchid, Colchid, and so it's a very far away country, and they know that they will find there this super big treasure called the Golden Fleet. And so the Golden Fleet is just like guarded by dragons and snakes and so on, and but the daughter of the king who's guarding the Golden Fleet is Medea, and Medea, she's a witch, super beautiful witch, and she falls in love with Jezo, and so she will help Jezo to steal the Golden Fleet and go back to Greece. And you know the rest of the story, right? About Medea? No?
Honestly, I don't, but it rings a bell.
Yeah, Medea will just like go back with Jezo, but the son of a bitch, when then in Greece, finally will take another wife.
Okay.
So she left everything. She betrayed her father. She betrayed her country. She stole the Golden Fleet, so the national treasure for Jezo, and she has 2 kids with Jezo. And now that they're in Greece, he won't recognize her as his wife. So she will do. Is very famous. What she will do, just she will say, "Okay, marry your wife. I'm okay. I'm just going." And this is because I'm super nice. I'm giving you a present for your new wife, and just like you can do whatever you want. I'm going out. I'm just like, this is okay. I'm a good loser, but she's not. Because finally what she does is like the present, she's a beautiful white dress. And then when the new spouse is just like putting this new dress on, she's on fire. She gets on fire and she's burning and dying. Wow. And then Jezo, he's got this horrible feeling when he sees that. He says, it must not be the only thing that Medea did. So he's just running to the castle, to the palace to see how the kids are. And then he sees Medea with a big knife and she throats. She cut the throat of the two kids.
Of her own kids. Yeah.
Of her own kids. And she says, okay, you took everything from me. I'm taking everything from you. And then she runs away. And this is just like a strong, crazy woman. And this is super famous. Just like she's a super interesting figure about maternity and motherhood and how do you deal with that. And just like what it means. Are you first a mother or a wife or a lover? And so this kind of, when you're doing theater, it's just like super interesting myth about just like Georgia. Because Georgia used to take place in Georgia.
Okay. Understand.
So I wanted to get there. I was there. So it's like the country is super interesting. I mean, like, is it Europe? Is it not anymore Europe? I mean, like, even like people here, they don't really. It's just a big political subject here. I'm like, do we belong to Europe? For which reasons are we belonging to Europe? I mean, this is super interesting. So how do these people identify themselves, European or not? Because if they do, I mean, like, what kind of Europe are they belonging to? That's a super interesting question.
What did you learn about?
You don't learn. I mean, like, it's more just like you see things and you here Georgia is what's super interesting for me here in Georgia is just like identity is mixed, totally mixed. At the same time, they have this strong sense of identity. They're only 3 million. They have their own language, own alphabet, super complex. And they're just like in the middle of so many huge empires, just like Iran, Russia, Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
And so they have this strong identity, and at the same time they're on the Silk Road. Like Tbilisi is on the Silk Road, meaning that they're just like everything is mixed here. Like architecture, just like you have this Persian architecture and plus Turkish architecture, plus Russian architecture, plus Soviet architecture. Now you have this capitalist architecture. Everything is mixed. Like the food is just like a mix between everything. So at the same time, you can feel it here, maybe more than in some other countries, that identity, actually, it's a mix and it's an evolution. It's never just like something which is totally stable. It's a process. Identity is a process.
Yeah. Nice. So as you interview people, as you talk to people, as you do your research, do you feel like there is a common identity? Do you feel like people are giving you different answers for everything?
That's super interesting. I mean, like, what's really what's really interesting me about this Abkhazian thing, for instance, is that you can understand that people, they build their identity not only with something that they have, but they build their identity with something that they don't have anymore. For instance, it's super important, just like think about the bodies, the dead bodies. It's super important for people here just like to get back the dead bodies even 35 years after. And when the dead bodies, this is what I learned yesterday. I had this interview with a woman from the Red Cross, and she was telling me her job was just like to find the remains of the people. There was like 35,000 people, Georgian people dead in 91, 92, which was like more than 30 years ago, right? And so her job now is to, they found something like 20,000 of these disappearing people, and now they're trying to find the 12,000 people, or 15,000 people left. And so there's when they find these bodies, and they can just like identify who are, who belong to, what's the, who were these people, like these bodies. And so it's a super long and difficult process. And as they're bringing these bodies back to Tbilisi, and the bodies, they are buried in the military graveyard, national military graveyard, after a huge national commemoration. Meaning that there's this thing about something is missing to us, which is like all these people, and we're just like trying to create our sense of national identity around these missing people. So we're not building our identity on the top of something that exists. We are just like building it on the top of something that we don't have anymore. And the same for this area, Abkhazia. People, if you ask anyone here about Abkhazia, they will all tell you in Georgia is Abkhazia.
Right.
And so this is, but it's not in their life anymore, but it still define themselves.
Why is Abkhazia important to them?
Probably for many reasons. First, it's super beautiful. This is kind of, like two areas here are occupied by the Russians, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. It's hard for people, they never talk to me about South Ossetia. They're always talking about Abkhazia because it's super beautiful. It's on the sea. Sukhumi was the capital. It was really an awesome city. This is where just like all the Soviet elite took their holiday in Sukhumi. So it was super beautiful, and just like there was all these fruit trees, and just like in the east of Sukhumi you have the lakes, the mountains, the rivers, just like it's Eden. It's paradise. So I think there's this thing about just like the lost paradise. You had something, you lost it, but maybe this thing was the most beautiful thing on earth. And of course, this is the first thing. The second thing is that 250,000 people had to run away. So you have 10% of the population of this country that was displaced. You say that in English, displaced. From one point to the other. It's 10%, 1 over 10 people. So everybody knows someone who was displaced, if maybe in their own families, and they still have their house over there. It's just like, okay, when will we get back our house? Because they just had to run away so quickly. So there's this thing about just like, at the same time it's kind of nostalgia, and at the same time it's real pain, because people died, and just like, and it's still super fresh. I mean, it's only 35 years old, not only 30 years old. Yeah, just like it's the pain, the scar is not there. Yeah, I mean, like it's still open. The pain, the wound is still open.
Yeah, and the people who, do you think do you see any connection between the people who would like to join Europe and people who, I don't know who you've talked to, how many people you've talked to, but it's sort of shared by everyone that they miss Abkhazia, but then other questions like, are we part of Europe? They're more it's not agreed.
Yeah, I mean, like this Europe thing. I mean, like I think that 90% of people here in Georgia, they consider themselves being part of Europe. The big thing is, which Europe are we talking about? Is it just like the Europe of the human rights, or is it Europe of the kind of wealthy Europe? Is it money, or is it just like human rights?
Ooh, can you explain that some more?
It's kind of super interesting. It's the same for Eastern Europe in general. I mean, for some people, they want to go to Europe because it's giving them a shelter, and because they know that they will have like the civil rights, just like the right to just like women's right or LGBTQI right, or this kind of rights. Thing is that like this country just voted like 2 days ago a law against LGBTQI rights. I mean, like with this propaganda law. So they're getting very far away from civil rights. At the same time, a lot of people, and this propaganda law is kind of supported by people here. Just like people are super homophobic in Georgia. They really think that lesbian and gay people are not should not be considered as straight people. I think this is like 90% of the people think that. Like, okay.
Yeah, there's a good movie. Did you watch Time to Dance?
Yeah, and then we danced. Yeah, exactly. And so this is like a super interesting, this first thing, that you want to go to Europe, but you want to go for the civil rights, or just because it's a kind of a free market thing. And so you will get rich because there's no borders for just importing or exporting your products. This is different, like two different, different reasons, just like to get to belong to Europe. But you cannot have one without the other one. I think Europe's got like this kind of misunderstanding with like the newcomers in Europe, like the Eastern country, like Hungary, for instance. Hungary, they have like super conservative agenda concerning, and they're still part of Europe. So every decision now we're doing in Europe, like for concerning just like women's rights or just like LGBTQI plus rights, are just being opposed to just like the Hungarian perspective. So that's a big issue. That's a big issue. Why do you want to join Europe? What's your reason for that? And so how do you define yourself as a European? What does it mean to you to be a European? So is it only to be a Christian? It's maybe not enough.
So maybe we can jump into another topic that's definitely linked, because you have a lot to say about identity, and it actually seems like something that you think about and it's important to you. And the way that this podcast, this episode together came about is that you said to me, well, when I asked you if you might be interested, is you're not the person to talk about identity with. Why did you say that?
Because like today, I think it's like, as I told you, to my opinion, identity is a very limiting concept. It's a process, actually. I really think anyone who went to see a therapist understands that we have a conscious level of our minds, and this is clear to us, but 90% of the things we do or we say, we don't control them. It's unconscious. And the same for our identity. We think we know ourselves. Probably we don't. Probably there are so many different layers that we don't control because it's just like dictated by just like our religion or community or nationality, or even if we have a self, just like, I don't know if such a thing exists, but if we have like something which is just like genetically or just like we have in ourselves, meaning like sexual orientation, taste, blah, 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 blah. And so thinking about identity, about defining yourself, is kind of a very fascist project in a way that trying to define yourself when you know that you only know 10% of yourself is super limiting.
Yeah.
Because what happens if you find out that what you really are is not exactly what you think you were? How many people do we have like they're just like, let's talk about sex, just like people that think they're straight and suddenly they're 40 years old and they feel that something is changing. Shit. They don't like, this guy, he used to love girls and suddenly he's getting attracted by a guy. So what's his identity?
Yeah.
Because he just like thinking about his identity, if he said to himself, okay, I'm a straight guy, I'm a straight guy, I'm a straight guy, I'm a straight guy, I'm such a straight guy, and it was so true for 40 years, and then suddenly something's changing.
Yeah, it's so much about expectation or what you've already decided, because at some point, if you've been gay for a while, if you were gay one day, it's easy to wake up the next day, it's still gay. And that goes for everything with identity. It's a great point. And actually, it's kind of the idea behind the name of the podcast, behind the idea of the podcast, Post Definitions Podcast. Exactly. It's like a world after we stop using labels to understand identity. A world where we stop limiting ourselves by the definition, the way we define ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
And things that's super interesting. Like, I'm a director, meaning like I'm working with actors. Actors are people who are getting paid to endorse different identities. And actors, they're not just like faking. Like, the good actors, when they're turning into a character, they're just like finding in themselves how they could just like match with the character. They're not just like making it out of the blue. They're just like trying to say, okay, this is a part of myself, this is a part of myself, this is a part of myself, and if I make these parts a little bit bigger, then I will become this character.
Yeah.
And so it's super interesting to think that there's so many things inside of us that can be reshaped, and it doesn't ask, it doesn't demand so many things just like for these things to be reshaped. And then if I just like, so this is true for actors, but this is true for playwrights as well. As a playwright, I'm not writing novels, I'm writing plays, meaning that I'm writing different characters' lines. I'm line for different characters, meaning that in myself, I have to hear these voices. And I don't believe it's such kind of mystical thing. When I'm hearing these voices, they're just coming out of myself. So in myself, I have all these different characters, like these 15 different characters of the play. So, and they all come out of, some things that I don't know. If I, if I knew everything that I was writing in the while I'm writing it, I would not do it because it would be boring. No, it's just surprising me. Oh, this is like, there's this voice of someone else inside of me.
Yeah.
So we just like collecting so many different identities in our own identity. Thinking about identity is just like, it's a kind of super easy way to make us quiet. Okay, we know who we are, so we don't have to think about it, and we can just keep on having a very secure life.
Yeah. Someone might say to you, you are who you are. You are French. You are a man. Stop writing for these women characters. Stop writing for Georgia.
Yeah.
You're not the one who. This isn't your experience, your battle, blah blah blah. But actually, no matter who you are, you're writing for people who want to be heard. You're writing an important story, and regardless, you can do it. I mean, I would think some people might argue that you can't do it, but that would be kind of crazy, because that would say that like all novelists or writers could never write multiple characters. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I think that like this, what I was saying before, that you have all these different things inside of yourself, is super true, and at the same time, it demands some kind of, let's say, politeness and respect, meaning that hence the interviews. When I'm going to Georgia, I'm interviewing a lot of people, so I'm not repeating all the stereotypes people might have said about them before. Hence the politeness. This is not my history, this is not my culture. What I'm gonna write, will be written through the filter of my own perception. And because my perception can sometimes be super wrong, I have just like to interview people and just like to talk with them, so I'm sure, that what I say is accurate. I remember when I was working in Hong Kong, people were saying, you don't write with other people's blood. You're not allowed to write with other people's blood. And I think this is kind of interesting. Just okay, so I let you blood to write with. Maybe I'm trying to write with my own blood about your story. And so, but this is kind of tricky.
What does that mean, to write with your own blood?
For instance, like for Hong Kong, it was super instructive, because I was, Hong Kong, they went in 2019 through huge demonstrations. And I wanted to write about that, and my fellow actors, the Hong Kong actors I was working with, were telling me, you cannot write about that. You don't know what it was for us, and it's not in 1 or 2 months that you will just know it, because you need to be just Hong Kong people to know that. And I was like, no, I can do everything. No, I can do it. And finally, I think, well, maybe there are some other subjects I could talk about, which will be as important that, and which will just like make other things arise, other things just like relevant about the Hong Kong society, just to be seen. And I'm like the important thing is not to myself. How do you call that in English? To get violent with some people's opinions, just to respect them and to respect their boundaries. When you talk about identity, you have to be super respectful.
Yeah.
People that just like telling you a lot of things, don't use them if they don't want these things to be used. It's a very tricky thing, because at the same time it's limiting your freedom of speech, but it's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
So how can you
can you think of a borderline case where you had to wonder?
Totally. Like one of the first texts that I wrote was it was like 15 years ago. I walked through France. I drew a line on a map in France. I'm French, so, and from the northern France to the south of France. And I said, okay, I'm gonna write on this line for real, and just like write everything that I see, just like crossing France, just like straight on.
Like it was a road?
Yeah, it was just like, of course I could not just like go through houses, but I was just like having my, I had my just like my line on the map, and I was thinking, okay, this road is just like going very close, and this road as well. And I was trying just like to be as close as I could to this line. And so the thing was that I had to sleep at people's place. So I was in every city. I was calling all of my friends saying, hey, I'm in this city, I will sleep in this city. Do you know anyone by chance who knows someone where, who's got a house there where I could sleep? And finally, it worked quite well.
Wow.
And I remember I was like in the north of Paris, and then there was just like these two people that gave me this hospitality, and they were so cool. And they used to be just like, they used to take a lot of drugs when they were young, and now they were totally clean, and they were super nice. And I was like writing. There was just like when I wrote the text, I was introducing them as ex-drug users. It was super young, and of course it was horrible for them, because it's like this was a part of their life they had just like way behind them.
Yeah.
And it was super unrespectful.
Oh yeah.
Because they didn't want anyone. I mean, even if they were, of course, they were not named. But like the only thing that
Oh, that's so hard. I actually started a newsletter the last few weeks, and I wanted to write really personal things, and I was like, well, I can't write about anything. And that's like basically the biggest issue I ran into.
But like you can just like write about your personal thing. You don't have to write about others people personal things.
Yeah, but some of the stories run into other people.
It's just like you can change it. I mean, and it was not that relevant as when you users.
Yeah.
Just like it was. For them, it was just like to see that they offered me hospitality for just like one night, and they fed me, and it was super cool, and we had this huge conversation. And the only thing that I remembered about them was something that was kind of a stigma of the society. They were drug users. And then I realized how stupid I was, and I really, it was like 15, 20 years ago, and then I decided not just like to do it. Just like you cannot write with other people's blood. They have their own issue, and of course they can inspire you in a way, but don't write that directly about them.
Yeah, maybe that's why writing fiction can be attractive.
Yeah,
because you can be inspired by the people,
exactly.
And then you can turn them into.
And you just like you put a mask on their experience.
Yeah.
It's not their experience anymore. You put another name, you put another gender, you put another age, another area, and of course you take the reality. I don't know if you're familiar with Proust, but this is exactly what Proust is saying when he wrote like the In Search of Lost Time, like this wonderful novel. He's just like saying that of course, everything is inspired by people he met, but just like every character is not inspired by only one character, by one real person, but by 4 or 5. Just like, and you put them together.
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of loops back to what you were saying about identities being more complicated than they might seem, or the fact that we have multiple identities within ourselves.
With so many identities.
Yeah.
And this is super cool to know that. This is super nice. Just like, this is when for instance, when I'm teaching acting. This is what I tell to my students. Like, you have to imagine that you're like a diamond, and you with different faces. You see that like the different sides of the diamonds.
Yeah.
And so, in your real life, you're conscious that you're using only 2 or 3 sides of your diamond. But of course, everybody can see like 20 or 30 different sides. You're only conscious about 3 sides, because like the 27 other sides, you're not aware that you're just like using them. People see it in yourself, they see it in you, but you're not aware of using it, because these are sides you don't like, or I don't know, and you don't want to show. And so you're just like always like the nice girl, or the handsome girl, or the just like the super smart girl. You will never be just like the grumpy girl. I don't know, just like this kind of and like being an actor means that you have to be aware of the 30 sides of the whole thing, all these layers,
so you can use them.
And you're real.
Cool.
But it's a huge it's a weird process, because you have to accept you're super ugly sometimes.
Yeah. So I was curious. I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to have an idea what you meant when you said that we have multiple identities within us, multiple people within us, different faces of the diamond. But if I would push back a little bit, what do you mean when you say you have an old woman in you, a 70-year-old woman inside of you?
Well, first of all, you will be, I hope, 70 years old one day. So and so one day you will feel that your body maybe doesn't react anymore. And at the same time, you can just like, you were telling me just before how you were connecting with an animal. And I love this verb, connecting. Just, you're connecting with people. And when you're connecting with people, you can understand how they behave and why they behave. Maybe if you don't understand, because maybe themselves they don't understand why they behave, so you can still have these things in common, and it's secret. You don't know exactly where it is, but then you still think, okay, my grandmother, she's just like behaving like that. And so maybe there's reasons for that. Maybe you will never just like know all the reasons, but then you can still maybe understand the beginning of the past that led her just like to behave the way she does. So this is why I'm saying that maybe we have like the potential of understanding each other and understanding even the biggest monster, just like to understand how it works, because how this person works, even if it seems to us to be a super disgusting person, because we might have in certain circumstances the same reaction. This is not very flattering for us, because it says that we're not that good. We're just like, sometimes we just don't want to see it, but sometimes you can behave like assholes, but this is true. This is what we are.
Yeah. And speaking of this surprising ourselves or acting like a new person, maybe we're finding a new side of ourselves, discovering a face of the diamond. I think in real life we can see new sides of ourselves, surprise ourselves.
Exactly.
Sometimes I think I've heard some stories, some movies, books criticized because someone says, oh, that person, that actor acted out of character, that character acted out of character, it's not realistic. How would you approach this possible problem of like, you want someone to be like real and fluid and have multiple personalities, but then you don't want them to maybe be
so this
too
is just
fluid.
like super. I mean, like people acting characters, they have to be just like on a, let's say, how do you call? Do you say that in English? Consequent. I mean, like they have to be understandable by you know, it's a theater play, just like a movie, it has to be understood by people watching it.
Yeah.
Meaning that you cannot be as complex as you would have been just like in your real life.
Okay.
So this is when you will give one, two, three, four different colors to your role,
Mm.
not like the 1,000 colors that you have in real life.
Yeah, which is interesting because it might be criticized as unrealistic if it has too many colors, but you would say that's
a
too
reality.
realistic for them.
Yeah, that's a reality. I mean, like this is, and actually this is kind of schizophrenia. Like the big thing about just like ourselves is that when we don't control all these different sides, when they're just like totally exploding us, this is called schizophrenia. We have many different sides. But the main thing about it is that we have this unconscious control on these different sides of our personalities. And so this is how we keep, together, and we're just like, we don't get crazy, we don't get mad. But it doesn't mean that they don't exist in ourselves. It says that in just like everyday life, we control it. We control these different accept, and we put ourselves together. So I really like it. This is an English idiom, right? To put yourself together.
Put yourself
doesn't
together.
It doesn't exist in French. You don't say that this way. But just like to put yourself together, it really means that. Just like you put yourself together.
Mm.
Don't get everywhere in the room. Just like put yourself together.
Mm.
And I think this is interesting. So we just have to get a control on it, but we don't have to obey to this lie of unicity, identity, which identity is just maybe some kind of an horizon. That's that's okay. We would love to be just one. We're not, but like this is something maybe we want to go to. But like until then, we won't be only one person.
Mm. Yeah, great. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to think about already, and we could dive into a lot of examples, so on and so on. But I don't know. I think we touched on a lot. Everyone has a lot to think about, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for it.
Wow.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.